The following program is brought to you by Mediacom and the Partnership for a Drug-Free Iowa. Hello, I'm Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Drugs and Children, Secrets for Parents, and our special presentation on meth, a threat to our children that just doesn't seem to go away. Today, we have a prevention expert, Melissa Walker, with us, and Corbin Payne, a member of the Tri-County Drug Task Force, as well as Jen Armstrong, a woman with a passionate story to tell about her experience with meth, her survival, and how wonderfully she's been able to recover and raise a family. Jen, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, it was quite inspiring to me when I heard a little bit about what you've been through and that you were going to come here, and now you're raising 6 children, and you're just doing great. Give us a little bit about this story and what you've gone through and how you got here today.
My drug use began when I was 16 years old, and when I was 16 was when I was introduced to meth. Meth was really what led me into kind of drugs and other alcohol and other drugs. Really, I think I was on the right path until I hit that age. I had scholarships lined up. I excelled in school, but as soon as I got a hold of meth and realized how it made me feel and kind of what it did for me, I was hooked, and I was hooked for many, many years.
Now, what grade were you in when this started?
Well, I actually transferred schools. I convinced my parents to let me transfer schools because I was failing. So that would have been 10th grade, about 10th grade. And I wasn't able to finish. I mean, my drug addiction took me down a path to where my dreams were kind of washed away, and I got my GED.
So about 16, you started using meth. Can you share with us a little bit about that first time?
The first time ever, I was scared and I was hesitant. I was with people that I trusted, so it gave me a little bit of insight that, you know, going down, using the drug wasn't going to harm me or hurt me right away, and it made me feel wonderful. I mean, that's what really hooked me. That first, you know, when you first start using meth, you go a lot faster, and, you know, things look a lot differently. It's really hard to explain.
Now, before you used meth, you said your life was on track. Scholarships, everything looked great. How did you get that first encounter? Was it a friend of yours, or?
It was with friends. It was also with some trusted adults in my life, and they, I think, had their own story to tell, but really that was my encounter. So I can't say that I trusted the drug, but I trusted the people around me while I was doing that.
All right, go back to those days. You're 16 years old, you have adults influencing your behavior, other friends, school starts to fall apart for you. Where throughout this process are your parents and your family?
Well, my dad was very supportive. He really tried to get me on the right track. He tried by putting me back in the school district I came from, where my grades were successful. I developed some charges as a juvenile due to my drug use, so I had a tracker that was involved. I had a counselor. I had a probation officer. They tried many times to kind of intervene, but I just really wasn't receptive. I was already down that path.
How old are you today?
29.
So we're going back almost 13 years. And you've been drug-free for over 5 years now.
Yep.
How long did you struggle with this before you had your first intervention?
You know, when I was 19, I had my first son, and I stopped for a short time. I started using very heavily after I had my second son, which was just a year later, and it wasn't until it was March of '08 that I was able to enter drug treatment, and really took things seriously. I really focused on what I needed to do. I faced dealt with some of the issues I guess I had with some of the people that I had trusted and relationships that I had, and really what was the root cause of my using and why.
Was there anybody instrumental in getting you into treatment?
I had an FSRP provider. She was instrumental in that. She really told me that she stood by my side. She answered questions. She was easily accessible. I could call her when I was having trouble. There was another friend. She was a sponsor for a short time for me, and she was instrumental. She really celebrated recovery. So.
Well, I know you've done really great things with your life, and we'd love to hear more about those. Would you be willing to come back a little bit later in the show and share those with us?
Sure.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
After the break, Melissa Walker, a prevention expert at ASAC, will give us an inside look into the trends of meth and meth use amongst our youth. Stay with us.
Many teenagers don't understand the dangers and effects of marijuana use. Now it's time for Just the Facts, ma'am. An IQ is a score determined from standardized tests to determine intelligence. An IQ of 100 puts the average person in the 50th percentile of intelligence. Regular marijuana use during teenage years can cause a long-term 8-point drop in IQ. A loss of 8 IQ points drops them to the 29th percentile. For more information, go to drugfreeiowa.org.
You wouldn't walk through the halls of your school naked. Yet without thinking, many teens sext explicit photos of themselves to friends using cell phones, never thinking it'll go further. But once you hit send, you're exposed. You're out there in cyberspace for everyone to see. Sexting, it's dumb, it's dangerous, and it's against the law.
Children see magic in the world around them, and parents see the dangers.
There is hope for the future if we face it together.
Find out more about how you can protect your children from the risks of illegal drugs, prescription medications, and alcohol.
Go to drugfreeiowa.org. Welcome back. We're joined by Melissa from the Area Substance Abuse Council to shed some light on the issues of meth and how they affect our children. Melissa, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure as well. Well, give us a little bit of a understanding of what's happening with meth today in our communities.
Well, we've seen several changes throughout the past several years. Meth obviously has been around for a long time, and amongst our youth, we've seen pretty consistent use rates. Back from 1999 until now, use rates among 11th grade has been fairly consistent, around 1% of youth, which is a nice low rate, so that's a good thing, but it's still there, and we're seeing an increase in the number of youth that are coming into treatment for meth use. We think some of that is because the meth that is being used now is more pure than it was in the past, and so people are getting addicted more quickly to that meth.
Now, do we have reason to worry about meth? Because we've seen a tremendous success in terms of what we call the war on drugs. We've shut down a lot of meth labs, but we're going to hear from Detective Corbin Payne later that there are some issues there too. What are you seeing in prevention and treatment work?
Well, we certainly need to worry about it. It's not one of the highest or most prevalently used drugs, but it certainly has a large impact on those that do use it, as well as those in the families and in the home structures. One of the things that we see with meth that we don't see as much with other drugs is the impact on children in the home because of the exposure to chemicals, the exposure to the manufacturing, the risk of explosives, as well as the criminal activity that often happens in homes around those that are manufacturing and distributing. So that's a huge risk and threat to those children that are exposed to meth, whether they're the ones that are using or they're exposed to that in their homes with other adults that may be using.
Now, how often do you get a chance to hear stories about things that happen in communities with meth production? Do you have parents that are asking you questions about these issues in their neighborhoods?
We do get questions. A lot of times, I think because there is so much hype about meth and there are people that hear the stories of the explosions and the stories of kids that get pulled out of homes, there's the perception that it's a lot larger of or more prevalently used than it actually is, and so it creates a lot of fear among parents. And it's a good thing that parents are aware that that is being used and that there are things that they can do about it. So we appreciate when those questions come in so that we can inform them of what's actually out there, how it's being used, what to watch for, and how they can be proactive in preventing that in their own homes.
And as I understand it, one of the biggest risks is that it's so highly addictive for children, so that these experiences can often lead to some tremendous traumas.
Yep.
In terms of the treatment scenarios that you get to see and the prevention work you do, what's the scoop from children on the street about meth?
What we often hear is that people are addicted within the first time or within the first few times of use. It is a very highly addictive substance, and much like other very highly addictive substances, it doesn't take many times of use before they're addicted and continue to progress in their use and continue to have impacts on their life.
Now, what do you think is the biggest red flag that a parent needs to look out for with a child?
I think any significant changes in behavior. Every youth is going to have a different look at what that might look like, but for each child, if they have a significant change in their behavior from how they used to act, if they were a star student and all of a sudden they're failing in class, if they used to hang out with positive youth and now they're the friends that they're hanging out with are getting in trouble, if they're withdrawn and they used to be very social, all those kinds of things are red flags. So anything that is a major change from their past experiences or behaviors is the most important thing for parents to watch for.
In terms of the home, do we see a lot of, is this a party drug? Is this something that shows up when kids party?
It is occasionally. I think that in many situations, it's something that happens in small circumstances, at least initially, that they're in trusted circles with one or two people or a group of a few small people that have already experimented maybe with other substances and decide to try meth for the first time. Sometimes it's tried in a party environment, but often it's tried in a home environment or with a group of other kids that may be just out in the community somewhere.
Now, what kind of tools is ASAC providing? Like, what are your strategies in dealing with making your community and giving parents the opportunity to learn more about what meth might mean to them?
Well, obviously we were involved in the Pseudoephedrine Control Act, and that regulated the sale of pseudoephedrine across Iowa, and that has been a huge success. That decreased the meth labs in Iowa from 1,500 down to just a few hundred a year, but there are still plenty of meth labs that are out there. Any are too many, and so we're continuing to try to just make sure that information is available. We try to refer people to the Iowa Substance Abuse Information Center for more information, and make sure that whenever they have questions that they know that they can call us and ask, and we will try to get them the help and the resources that are available to them.
Now, I presume you've met people that have been in treatment and recovery with meth. As an adult, what is the primary emotional feeling you get in meeting people that are dealing with this issue?
It's just so exciting. It's refreshing to see that there is hope in recovery, and there are so many people that don't believe in that, and so we've been working hard at reducing that stigma across the field and across the community so that people do understand that treatment works, that prevention works, treatment works, recovery is possible, and that people can go on past drug use to live happy, healthy lives if they get the help that they need.
Thank you very much for being with us, Melissa.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Nice to be here.
Okay. After a short break, we'll be back with Corbin Payne of the Tri-County Drug Task Force for a close-up look at what the war on drugs looks like for you and your children, and how meth may be making a resurgence in our communities.
NFC, AFC, offensive linemen, defensive tackles, quarterbacks, and cornerbacks are all living united to ensure the academic success of millions of kids in our communities all the way to graduation day. But that won't happen without you. So take the pledge at unitedway.org. Make a difference in the life of a child. Suit up like your favorite NFL players and become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor with United Way.
When Noah's mom brought him to drug rehab, she never thought he'd end up back here again. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
I hope it helped. See you guys next week.
Ready for lunch, Noah?
Yeah, Mom.
If you or someone you know is recovering from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Hey, I'm Anderson Cooper. As a parent, you want to make sure that your child knows how to deal with bullying when they see it happening. And chances are they want to help, but they don't really know how. Well, teach them that the best thing to do is calmly walk away, find a teacher or other adult, and speak up. And do your part. Be that adult they can talk to and trust will listen. Join me to help stop bullying. Go to stopbullying.gov to find out more.
Welcome back. We're with Lieutenant Corbin, member of the Tri-County Drug Task Force, who joins us now with an inside look at meth and its impact on our communities. Hello, Corbin. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure. You know, you're a human being, a person, and you have a tough job to do as a police officer. What can you share with us about your work? And well, let's start out with some facts. What are you seeing on the street with meth today?
Through our experience in the Black Hawk and Bremer County areas there that we cover, we have seen a dramatic decrease due to the pseudoephedrine law back in 2005, 2007 when it first started. We've seen in the large labs, we've seen a decrease in the amount of large labs we've had. Now we've seen a larger increase in the so-called one-pot methods, where methamphetamine is made much easier and more quicker in a short amount of time. We're seeing it a lower yield of product as far as what they're getting as far as the potency of the methamphetamine. And that's where we're running into problems where we're getting a lot of crystal meth and ice shipped into our area.
You know, I've talked with drug task force people around the state, and occasionally they've referred to the problem of meth as like a whack-a-mole game, where you close down the big meth labs and then they start with little labs. When you stop local production, stuff comes in from across the border or from other states.
Correct.
Is there evidence of that in our communities?
I believe so. As far as what we've dealt with, it's the supply and demand. You know, it's we're not getting a lot of the meth labs, like I said, and we get the larger one-pot methods that are not producing enough methamphetamine. Most of those just a lot of times just users that are trying to supply their habit with these one-pot methods. And the big problems we're dealing with now is the ice and the crystal meth being shipped in California, Texas, Mexico, as we're seeing a lot of that being shipped in over here. And of course, the supply and demand is making it more tougher on us as far as the enforcement.
You know, the job of being a police officer is unenviable. It's hard work and it's risky. You deal with people that are under the influence of various drugs and things like alcohol. Where does the person under the influence of meth rate as a risk to you and to the security of people when you find it out in the community?
They're one of our higher types of risks. You know, we associate ourselves with all the narcotics in the area. That's all we do is long-term investigations, all of narcotics. But methamphetamine is, as far as the paranoia that comes with the people that are using it, as far as where they're going to get their next high, is where the product's coming from, is it makes it dangerous, and especially the manufacturer of the methamphetamine, that's making it dangerous for all of us. All my investigators are lab certified, so they are aware of how to dismantle labs if that was to happen. So meth, of course, is the hazardness of it is a big project for us, and how to solve that.
Now, how do you see youth related to some of your work and investigations?
You know, as far as Melissa and Jen had spoke, we don't see as much as far as the usage and abuse along our outlines. It's more the parents. When we go into the houses, it's more of the parents. We're dealing with, 30, 40-year-olds most of the time with involving the methamphetamine labs, you know, things like their ages are not to the point where we're dealing with the youth and abuse. We're dealing with them being inside the house when this stuff is happening.
So young children are being put at risk by dangerous chemicals.
Sure.
And oftentimes those children have friends that may come to the house.
Yes.
Are there any tips you might share with parents related to knowing where their kids are going and maybe help safeguard them from dealing with these issues in the communities?
What I would say is I myself do a lot of education on methamphetamine labs, just to make yourself familiar with some of the items that are being used to the manufacture of them. A lot of it's online. Actually, you know, you can get, we have information through the drug task force that we can provide. As far as the items that are being, the most common items are being bought or stolen at the stores as of late, and some of the products to look for if a friend was to be at somebody's house where these things might arise.
Family interventions, things of that nature. In your work as a police officer, do you get involved in things like that as well when it comes to meth? Yes,
we do. When we do an entry or get in some of these houses that there's a methamphetamine lab or the information, not even the lab, just the ice of the crystal methamphetamine that we get information on, and we go in these places. If there's a child inside the home, we immediately call DHS and get them involved. We make sure that's documented in our reports so they can follow up on it. And a lot of times there's times that we call a grandparent or someone else to remove the child from the house if deemed necessary.
Now, when you're in a situation where there's meth, what other drugs and substances do you find often that proliferate?
You know, the most common thing that we see is marijuana. Marijuana is always at a search warrant, and you know, it's my strong opinion that marijuana is a gateway drug to methamphetamine, and not only any other drugs. But it's very common to see that.
Any tips you'd give to parents and people right off the top of your head?
Just keeping your eyes open for that type of activity, you know, marijuana. It could be, you know, obviously what we see is a gateway drug. So, you know, maybe if you find out that a child or someone you know is doing marijuana, methamphetamine might not be too far down the road. So,
Corbin, thank you very much for being with us and sharing that.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll be back with Jen and Melissa to share a message of hope, inspiration, and maybe some tips that'll help you safeguard your children from the threat of meth.
Watching your sister go through withdrawal is the last thing you expect to do. You hope she gets past it, but worry she'll relapse. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
That's 2 out of 3.
If you or someone you know is in recovery from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
I thought texting friends on her cell phone was harmless.
But there she is, our daughter, topless for everyone to see.
I'm so embarrassed for her. I can't even imagine what she must be feeling. How did this happen?
What was she thinking?
Someone sent our teenage son a photo of a naked classmate. If he forwards it, it's a crime.
Our son committing a crime? I had no idea.
And he could be labeled a sex offender.
Tell your teen, sexting is a crime.
Please, listen carefully. This is for real. We will save the life of a child. There are dangerous drugs in the hands of young children in Iowa. Synthetic drugs, sometimes called fake marijuana, and bath salts. They are in our communities and schools. Talk to your children now. Get help at drugfreeiowa.org.
We welcome back Jen and Melissa to the closing comments on Drugs and Children's Secrets for Parents, and to share a little bit of insight as to the hope and inspiration that comes from a great job in recovery. Jen, Melissa, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks.
Jen, we've talked a bit about the struggles you've had. Now talk about the great things that have happened in the last 5 years. Tell us how things have turned around for you and some of the wonderful things happening.
Well, I have been able to stay clean and sober, as we said earlier, for 5.5 years. And in that time, I've had, my family's grown. So I now have 6 beautiful children. They are all excelling. You know, I'm an involved parent, and it's been good. I went back to school. I was able to be successful in college, and I get to work with families now to provide them hope while they're fighting their addictions and going through some of the same struggles. So you get to do what I'm passionate about also.
You know, it's great you give back to the community. What are some of the things that you do in giving back?
Well, I may walk through the tough stuff with them. That could include helping them get into treatment. I am very involved with cases that they may have with the department. I also personally am very involved in the kids' school and give back to lots of fundraising opportunities they have there. I'm involved with work in Jones County, so I get to give back and be a part of some really, really amazing movements on keeping the children and the youth in Jones County alcohol and drug free. So do that with the coalition.
Now you do get to work with other moms as well throughout the state. What are some of the groups you work with here?
I work as a parent mentor. I work with families that are involved with the Department of Human Services. I'm also able to work with, I was a part of Moms Off Meth in the beginning of my recovery, and that really helped me stay grounded. I've also been able to work with, trying to think, we've had a lot of work with the coalition, Jones County Safe and Healthy Youth Coalition. There are parents on that board, and really that mission is to continue to.
It's so important that you do this, and it's so great for the community. I know that, because though we talk about all the successes we've had with meth, we certainly don't want to leave anybody behind and not offer the best support we can. On that note, Melissa, you do a lot of work in prevention, and this has got to be a great story for all the work that's done in treatment and prevention. What tips would you have that you would share that are most important for parents in dealing with these issues and to help them deal with these things constructively?
Well, the exciting thing is it's very simple. They're simple strategies that parents can do to engage with their youth. It's keeping track of where they're going, asking them where they're going, following up with them, talking to your kids, making sure that you have a clear and open dialogue about your expectations for substances, asking them their opinions and feedback about what's going on at their schools and with their friends, eating dinner with them, talking to their friends as parents. These are all just general things that any parent can do. It doesn't take a great, huge skill set to be able to prevent substance use. So that's one of the really nice things that we tell parents, and that gives parents a lot of hope.
Well, what do you think, Jen? Is that good advice? You're a mom.
I think it's great advice, and I think there is hope for anybody who has suffered from meth addiction. And I think that even being in those shoes, that's the exact advice that I would give my children, or steps that I would take also to help prevent.
Thank you very much for coming back with us.
Thanks.
We really appreciate what you have to say. Join us next time as we delve into the issues of underage drinking and the impact it has on our children. Thank you for joining us on Drugs and Children, Secrets for Parents on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.